Thank you, Charles. We're going to proceed then to our first keynote of the afternoon. And I will introduce Felipe Vera, who will be leading this and the following panel. So Felipe Vera is a specialist in the Division of Urban Development and Housing in the Inter-American Development Bank. He was trained as an architect at Universidad de Chile and holds a Master in Design Studies in Urbanism, Landscape, and Ecology from the Harvard Graduate School of Design. Welcome, Felipe Vera.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you all for being here. It's such a pleasure to see so many familiar faces. I think we're among friends, and really want to keep this conversation as such. In this line, we're going to start with this keynote. It's going to be a conversation between Florencia Rodriguez and Juan Pablo Porta. For me, it's also really a pleasure to introduce Florencia, which is a dear friend. Florencia is an architect by the Belgrano University, has been Loeb Fellow at the Harvard GSD, founding editor of Plot Magazine, and lots of architecture from where she's currently leads a new editorial project called Ness. Ness is a magazine about architecture, life, and urban culture. It embodies lots of architecture, publisher, mission, and spirit by addressing new ways of thinking about the built environment and a singular phenomena. So please join me in welcoming Florencia to the stage.
Okay, so hello, and I'm really glad to be here. And of course, I will start with the thank yous again. And I think that's never something that is an extra thing and repetitive. So first of all, thank you, Charles, for this invitation, and Pedro and Jeanette and this organization, and Felipe Vera. I think in the last years, I have been close to these events in different ways, with conversations also with Luis Callejas at the beginning. And it's something that I'm really happy about, because we have always tried, and when I say we, I'm talking about a group of people that I will probably show here in the conversation, trying to discuss this in our region and having the possibility to contribute to a broader conversation is always something that I believe in. I believe very much in dialogue, and you will see tons of pictures of people talking here, different people talking to each other, and that's something that really characterizes my work in many ways. So I'm just starting, and I will leave this image that I think it's kind of dark, but I took it with my phone the other day. This is the Argentinian pavilion at the Biennale in Venezia right now, and in a way, it kind of synthesizes some of the ideas that I will start with. I will then tell you why. I think, as it has already been pointed out here, that there is a very strong tradition of landscape urbanism in the north, and that instead in the south, we have been always conditioned with juxtaposed models of the grid and rationalized models of Leyes de India, and many things that we already know about the modern urbanism in this part of the world. This is not that we have not created our own words of understanding these links between nature and culture, or that we haven't been able to generate other things, of course, different to those models. But there is something there that is juxtaposed without understanding any topography or geography, and doing as if there was this mute territory that is not mute at all. In the other hand, I think also that in the last century, we know that in this region of Latin America, particularly in the south, modernism as a modern movement was really strong. So both these models, this of the grid, of the traditional urbanism, and modernism that was so strong in the 20th century, are two models that are very much related to the determinacy, to the certainty, to rationalism, and that were not very flexible into the relationship between, as I was saying, nature and culture. But in absolute opposition to this, a couple of years ago, Miguel Mesa from Medellin invited me to write a text about what was going on in Medellin and in Colombia, and I decided to call the text "We've Never Been Modern," or to talk about that as Latour's text exactly, that is saying that we have to blur, no? There is no such a thing as modernism, in the terms that even though it was a rational construct that wanted to construct this opposition between nature and culture, that's something that cannot be done in a way. It's a modern constitution, it's an organization of thought, it's a mode of thought, but not something that is really like that. And when I was reading that text, I was thinking that for South America, or maybe for the Americas in general, and this is some common ground, we are the ones that could say, really, we've never been modern, because being modern relates to a very long tradition of centuries of a thing that was organized since the Renaissance, probably, as I believe, and in its most important moment since the 18th century, And we were not part of that tradition. In fact, the Americas started to grow and to understand themselves in the 20th century, before there was this organization of different situations, political, sociological, and of course very complex situations that were done. So this is a land of opportunity, it has already been, and I think that there is in this common ground, there is a possibility to reinterpret, to understand what we can give to the thinking of the contemporary city. So the idea of landscape, Charles already mentioned many interesting concepts about it that I agreed to. And I think that it's functioning, it's working today as a provider of theoretical opportunities. And also it has shown kind of something that it's very easy to relate to. You know? When all the theories about the uncertainty, the indeterminacy, or just the complex started to be so popular in architecture and urbanism in the 80s and 90s. It started before now, but those decades were the ones in which they kind of explode in theoretical terms. I thought there was something kind of, the complexity of the language was something that you had to make an effort to understand. But instead, the idea of landscape is talking about the certain similar things as those, but in a way that we can always relate to, because it's very tied to experience, to perception, to a sensitive way of understanding a space that defines our everyday life. There is no coincidence for which we have been listening about soundscapes or different words that have been adapted to end with space at the end as a suffix. No, it's because there is something about this atmosphere that we are living in that is very close to this. So that's why I think there is quite an urge to discuss about this related to the city. So this is now why I want to go to the images and let you know in which ways that informs my work in my everyday life. And I leave this pavilion, but I liked something very much. It was recreating certain weather situation of the Pampas, and as you can see in the little image, there was a reflection of some projects that I'm not showing right now, because what I wanted to show is how the experience was something that was really in the first time there. This image is an image that I usually show, and I think there are some people that I know here that probably heard me. And it's just to manifest something that has to do with this feeling of the responsibility of generating territory or generating a landscape also with ideas. The Tupperware comparison works only because this thing that was sold from mouth to mouth, in the domestic sphere where you were relating to and started growing and generated the whole phenomena of selling is something that is similar of what you do with ideas many times. You start generating things in the domestic, in the academic, in the cultural sphere, and then it starts growing and generates opportunity to continue talking and doing things. These are some exhibitions that I curated some years ago with people from different parts of Argentina in the first case and different parts of the world in the second one. This one was called, this one was related to ecology and the city, and many friends are there talking, but this is only to show you that the necessity to discuss about the contemporary city, contemporary architecture, which is the criteria by which we have to think about this or judge this, or where does criticism and theoretical thought stand, where do you build sense, meaning, understanding, is something that in a way obsesses me. This is a group of people from Post, and in 2010, together with a group of people, we created Plot. That's the first issue, and within the magazine, which I directed until the end of last year, and here is Rodrigo, I don't know where he is, Gemmersbender, there, who is now directing the project. We have always discussed and agreed that this was something that we should discuss and that we should put into the agenda and open to our local and regional scenario. So there I just kind of put some arbitrary covers. Number one, the one that was related to Topotec, and the one that was related to Latin America, because we also were thinking there and proposing very strongly that Latin America has so many things going on right now, but lacks of narratives to say what is going on. So we saw, analyzing different things, that there was a production that was really very much worth to analyze and to generate, but we needed that consciousness of feeling as cultural producers, and that's something that we kind of work and believe until today and in the future probably. So here is there are some images about Agua Alta in Paraguay, who I think are here, and many articles that we devoted to landscape as urbanism, landscape with different interpretations, urban projects, trying to make that part of the local discussions. We also made 2 special issues on landscape. This is the last one with some projects. We were very happy to be able to translate the landscape as urbanism text, and because if it's not also available, there is no possibility to talk about it, and that's interesting. Monte is a place that Pablo Gerson and I founded a couple of years ago. It's our office in a way that we share with all the other dear friends present here. And we organize usually some talks there and conversations, sometimes are open to the public, sometimes are study groups or things that are from different scales, workshops. And we really try to incorporate these ideas as well, or these concepts, and open the doors for friends to generate new things there. Here, in fact, are some events that we organize with Martin Uberman, that is around there, a panel discussion on the city, a panel discussion on landscape, some invitations from people from Uruguay. And our last project, also with Pablo, is Lots of Architecture Publisher, which we say it's a megaphone and it's an experience. It's a publishing company that, more than a publishing company, I like to say a publishing platform that really believes in the power of design, of the understanding of the built environment. So I will just read a little bit of a fragment of our editorial text very briefly and just pose some questions to keep on with the discussion. Cities are in constant growth, and growth brings with it new needs. People are changing, the ways we live, experience, talk, think, and feel are in clear transformation. Meaning, climate, economy, politics, space, relationships, education, languages, art, lifestyles, rules, genders, identity, fashion, context, revolutions, ecosystems, culture, communications, bodies, societies, and everything that once defined our modes of inhabiting this world have been in a process of dramatic and constant reformulations since the moment we first brought television into the domestic sphere. Today, we understand that the complexity of our world and the diversity of voices that compose it have created a multiplicity of formal expressions, interpretations, and desires that reflect the way we live, define, and inhabit our spaces. Architecture has always had the power to become one of the utmost collective representations of an epoch. It materially manifests the ultimate milestones of the spirit of its time to confront the unbearable lightness of being. That is why we created Ness, this media platform about architecture, life, and urban culture. The idea of Ness is a suffix that gives an adjective or pronoun the possibility of becoming a noun. It's kind of playful. It implies that we need new words to define, new vocabularies to define new ways of inhabiting this world that we are talking about. So lots of architecture publishers finds value in imagination and invention as theoretical tools. They reinforce our active critical role in the formats we create for the dissemination of ideas, forms, images, debates, and dialogues, as we search for cultural agitation, provocation, and the promotion of great and groundbreaking ideas. So with this and some just images related to that, I would like to just pose some questions for the day that have to do with what is that it informs the project today, what is that we mean when we say city, when we say landscape, as we were discussing before. How do you think these cities in constant growth and change can absorb the problematics and the complexity of the strata that informs them? So I hope to and look forward to your presentations and for a very enrichful discussion during the afternoon. There it is.
Thank you, Flor. Please sit on the table. Yes, you won't escape from us so quickly. Okay, so we want to unpack a little bit this idea of cultural production behind what landscape urbanism means. And in order to do that, I want to invite to the stage Juan Pablo Porta to engage in a conversation with Florencia. Juan Pablo is an architect graduated from the University of Buenos Aires, Argentina. He also has a master in landscape urbanism from the Architectural Association of London. He got it in 2002. He's also principal of Porta Architects and assistant professor at the School of Architecture and Urban Studies of Torcuato y Tella. He has been he has published books like Archivos de Arquitectura 6, Genéricos, with Luis Ortega and Santiago Bosola. Please, let's welcome Juan Pablo to the stage.
Hello? Hello? It's working? Yeah. Thanks, Harvard, Pedro, Charles, everybody for the organization, for the invitation to this event. I will start asking you about the media role. Mm-hmm. Media platforms have dominated the ways in which it is absorbed, the content and ideas from academia and the discipline as a whole. Mm-hmm. Prior to these last 2 decades, projects were primarily disseminated via institutional publications. While this still occurs today, media platforms and the derived social media platforms have become a kind of new state of things. What do you think is the current state of those platforms for generating architectural landscape discourse? And going more deep, can productive theory and criticism live inside that?
Yes. Yes. No. First of all, like the world domination is a very strong word, and I think that media, that we are dominated only by what we permit. No? It's like you have to be open to that domination, and if not, you won't be. So part of this always takes me to this exhibition by Montadas that I usually show, that was just this sticker or billboard that would say warning, attention, perception needs attention. No? And if you use your attention, you'll probably avoid being dominated by any mode of thought of any media. But I really believe in the value of media, of course, and I believe that with that value, you have a responsibility. And yes, there are lots of architecture publications, as there are a lot of TV shows or things like Netflix or different cultural dispositives that make you feel a little bit numb and don't distinguish, and just, well, you see it many times when we are at schools and teaching and everything, that so many images and information sometimes generate like a big lack of information in a way, no? Because you don't ask questions to the images, or you don't ask questions to the authors, and there is a way of relating to that should be critical. Having said that, I really believe that there are many publishers and critics that have found ways of pushing in a very positive way. Positive way, when I say that, I want to say that it's not like juxtaposing your idea to the public. And when I was talking about the Tupperware thing and expanding territories, it's not that I think that I myself as a publisher or critic have the truth and that I do have to spill it over. No, it's just with ideas and the propositions, I've been awake in a way and trying to understand the discussions, to translate those discussions in a way. You're opening, as I was saying, dialogues, and in that dialogues is where I found value, no? In the possibility of reading an article, seeing a project, understanding a problematic on the city, and being able to talk about it with different kind of peoples and think and let your ideas change sometimes. That is something that we are not used to usually.
Yeah, I was, when you were presenting, especially the part of Ness, you were talking about a lot of words,
yes,
that inspired the project of Ness. But at the same time, I was thinking about the difference between curating and compilating, or collecting, collecting. Like, I think there is something kind of dangerous there. Like the difference between collecting and curating. Because there is something about the promotion of, no? And the role of the drive, to drive the discourse of the landscape in this case.
Yeah, I think there are two absolutely different things. That compiling things and showing is something that, in fact, you can do yourself, just putting together things or receiving newsletter from everybody, and that would be. But there is a value in critical edition, that it's important, and sometimes a magazine like Ness or like Plot, when you see it, you might believe that there is no work in how the things are reunited there, but there is a lot of discussion, and I have always talked about conceptual constellations in a way, because of course we don't have now linear narratives or linear dogmas or canons or discourses, and we wouldn't like that as well. But when you put together things, you are trying to generate sense, to generate some understandings, to to provoke with those ideas. So for me, it's very different to compile than to curate. You are trying to rehearse ideas, even in exhibitions or in periodical publications. You have the possibility also to change those ideas and show a different broad panorama or possibilities. It's not just one way or the other. No?
I was trying to simplify the media cultural spread in between three spaces. Somehow you have the media as a reflection of the practice, the media as a promoter of a certain disciplinary discourse, and the media as a tool for diffusion of architecture or landscape. I think the most interesting thing is in between them. No? If you agree, could you talk about this? How we can explore in between these three pillars of any media device that we have now?
Yes. I agree that the best is when it's in between, when you're trying to promote certain questions or themes, but at the same time you want to give your audience some information. At the same time, you always want, I don't know, not all the editors, but at least in the media that I have been involved with, we've felt the responsibility to research and not be comfortable with whatever comes to you, because also you start receiving the information of the offices and press releases all the time, so it would be very easy to make any publication just repeating things, no? Una repetidora, como TV show. But I feel that part of the responsibility is to be able to research and to show something else that is not that obvious. And also, as I was saying, to make the right questions to the things that we are all seeing and being witnesses of. Of course, we will all feel curious about certain things, the biennials, the last big building that Big made, or Herzog and Meron, and that's okay, and that's good. We want to see that too, but we have to be able to understand the context and see also something else. And the proposal of a media is always related to how it shows those things, because it's related to how it sees it.
There is two things that I think they are very important according to, or in relation with the project that we are going to see, or maybe it's something that I like to see in the project that
yes,
we are going to see. And one is the relation with the politics of the projects and the state of how you proliferate certain culture, and how the power or the making decision space or room use that and control that,
yes,
and somehow frena.
Stop.
Yes, somehow stop the power of the promotion of the culture. And the other one is the incorporation of technology. If we go like 20 years ago, we could see landscape as from the perspective of culture. And now we are like inverting this, and how the technology is helping to see landscape from the natural perspective.
Okay, so the first one was
the first one about the politics.
Yes, the first one, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I forgot to say something as well, that there is something that is a shared responsibility between designers, architects, and planners, that we should try to get involved in the decision-making processes. And if we don't learn how to talk with politicians, or how to analyze what is going to read what is going on in the cities, and that have to do with economies, with very complex constructs and things we are not being part of. So we cannot just complain that we are not being called to action. It's something that we should try to do. And part of the work that we do in the publications and also with the talks and dialogues tries to put those people together in the same room. And I think politicians and architects and designers and landscape designers should be in the same table more frequently. And particularly in this part of the world, we know that that is something really hard, and probably many of the architects that will talk later will tell more about that. And the second one, there are two different, it will be also...
The role of technology in terms of how we are looking at culture from the natural perspective.
Yes, well, I would disagree that technology wasn't always related to landscape, and it's something that is absolutely, they are part of each other in the reading that we can do of the contemporary, and of different situations that we, specifically from the post-war ahead, many decisions taken into the technological sphere would determine the landscape, the territorial organization of the world, and vice versa. So that's something that we can understand. Nowadays, well, from even bitcoins are generating situations that are particular. But I think that they are intrinsic. And it's not also a coincidence that texts as Stan Allen's field conditions and everything were both talking about this idea of the field in terms of a territory, of a landscape, and within the technologies that were now used to design and to think about the environment.
Okay, I think we have to move on to the next. Thank you.